Okay, guys, I'm so happy to share this with y'all today because I feel like so often, it's like kind of easy to uh, make the changes and then not kind of like clue your audience in on why or want to make them seem a certain way or whatever. But we've made a lot of changes at a Lit Up Life in terms of how things operate, made a lot of changes at Datable. And so I feel like it would just be helpful to like talk you through that and share. My reasoning may not be your reasoning at all, but I think it's really helpful. Hey, Alicia, so good to see you. Thanks for being here. Michelle said it's going to be 80 here later this week. And what is happening? Fall weather is so unpredictable, which I usually don't like unpredictable things. So who knows why I love it, but I do. Fall in the south of France is a bit like Florida, I think. I imagine probably a little prettier. Yeah, Shantae, I forgot you're a Florida girl too. Yeah, you are. You're gonna have to like give me summer vibes because if I live in Florida, I kind of need summer girly vibes for sure. Okay, so well, I guess we'll walk through each separately. So maybe I'll start with Datable and then we'll go to Lit Up Life and I'll tell you what changes we've been making, why. Oh, I know what I was saying. Like our reasons might not be your reasons. So I'm going to give you like the reason and context behind it, but hopefully what it gives you is permission to make a change and some perspective on like why you might want to or why you might not want to, because I think that's so important too. I feel like in entrepreneurship we're almost like so programmed to like change things up, change things up, change things up. And so if our context here doesn't suggest that it's the right time for you, maybe it's permission to not change things up. That is also very, very useful in business sometimes. So just remember that I'm not sharing this to say this is exactly what you should do, but I just want to tell you guys why we're doing what we do and the thought behind it so that you can decide how that might apply to your business. So let's start with Datable. Oh, good. Very permission giving. I'm glad. I think that that is so important. I feel like sometimes these things can too easily come across as like, this is what we're doing. And so this is what you're supposed to do. And that's not what I want here. So, okay. So at Datable, one of the big changes that we made that I feel like y'all probably know because it's like an obvious one is we moved Datable to a 9 grid on Instagram. So what I mean by that is, like when the grid that you can see when you land on someone's like Instagram page, like it's cute. You should go see it. And we're at Get Datable, but we have just like a beautiful 9 grid and we're not posting to the feed anymore at all. We do still share in stories and things like that, but we pulled back so dramatically from Instagram and social media. And so I feel like that always provokes a lot of curiosity. And so I want to share with you some of the reasons behind that. And again, like there's a lot of context with Datable. Like Jen and I, neither of us is Datable our primary thing. And so just keep that in mind as I talk through that too. Shantae said, "Ooh, she made that change as well." The Insta site I've heard it Coin does. Oh, I like that better than 9 grid Insta site. That's actually really cute. I haven't heard that, Shantae. I really like that description. So why did we do that? For a few reasons. Number one, we watched data, right? So this is an obvious one. And Instagram just like wasn't driving good traffic. So it was driving some traffic, but it wasn't driving purchase traffic or people that were ultimately converting to buyers. It was driving some, but not a lot of traffic, period. And for the amount of work that was going in, both in terms of our time, but also like team and money, it just like the payoff just was like so clearly not there. I'm a long game girl. So Jen was kind of saying this a while ago. She's like, the payoff's not there. And I'm like, give it a few more months. I want to play the long game. Let's see what happens. Hang in there, and Jen is way more of a quick start. So we were kind of like, she's like, light it on fire. And I'm like, give it just a little bit longer. Anyway, she was right. Although I'm glad we gave it the time to like fully see the trajectory. Right. And I think she would agree with that, for sure too. But basically, thanks, Elizabeth. Oh, Alicia, you did that too. That's awesome. I think a lot of people have moved to that. So the data was one big reason. Another big reason is that I feel like with the concept we're working with at Datable, like data is kind of a heavy topic. And so when I was talking to different people, like definitely ideal clients about like, what would you want to see from us? What would you want to hear from us? What would you want to learn from us? Like the pervasive thread through all of it was like, learning about data a ton on Instagram just like isn't it for me. Like when I'm like scrolling at 9:30 p.m. or whatever, like when I'm like breastfeeding my baby and like doing the scroll, like that's not what I'm really trying to like get from that thing or that platform. Like it's not that I don't want to learn about data, but it's like context and platform is really, really important, obviously. And so it just wasn't where I was hearing like a lot of people wanted to learn or consume stuff, content around data. It wasn't that they were like, I don't want to learn about data. It was just like that, like my head is not in that place. That is not the place that I like want to be doing it. And I felt like that was really, really, really useful information too, because it totally makes sense, right? Like there are places we go for certain things. And so if that doesn't match up, like your content's not going to perform, Shantae said, I love the polarity though. I was in your camp too. I waited it out and came to the realization that it just wasn't driving force for lead gen for my business or lead conversion for my business. And also based on data. Love that you looked at that, Shantae. So good. Adrian said, I have a second business with a partner and we're in the exact same spot of moving to a grid because it's too much work and money with our team for virtually no return. Oh my gosh, totally. I have so much more to say about that, but I think that is it, right? Second business partner, what's the trade-off, right? Hi, Sabs, thank you. I love you, appreciate you. So all of that was just like really obvious. Like, okay, our ideal clients want data information, but probably not here. Our data saying isn't creating great lead conversion, like Shantae was saying, right? And it was a fuck ton of work and money. Like the truth that I think like nobody really like likes to say is that to be really successful on like Instagram or TikTok or whatever right now takes a lot of time and thought and energy. It really does. Like it's not what it used to be where it was just like simply throw up some repurposed content and a, picture and call it a day. And so it's not like I don't even think we could have overcome some of those objections of like Instagram isn't where I want to learn about data. It's that I didn't have the energy or time or desire to have to fight that fight, basically. I really think it could have happened, like, gosh, there are people out that are killing it on Instagram teaching about Excel or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's not an impossibility. It's just, it takes an incredible amount of focus and concentration and testing and tweaking and studying and creating and all of those things. Like, a word that comes up for me when I think about that is devotion. Like it takes so much devotion to that success. And the reality is like Jen and I just don't have the capacity for that. Like we want to be like serving clients really, really well in Datable. And that's our first priority. And so putting that much energy into content creation just didn't make sense for us. Who knows? Like maybe we'll revisit in the future. I have no idea. It's just like kind of knowing what you can give and what you can't. And to get it to where it would have been worth it for us was not a give that made sense for us at that time. Yeah, exactly. Sarah, so much work. Shantae said it requires so much intentionality that I'd personally rather put elsewhere, like email us, for example. Totally agree. And I'll tell you where else we're putting that time in a minute, but I completely agree. Lisa said, yes, I think there is also this. I love showing up on Instagram. And so I want to make it work. And if that isn't there, then it makes so much sense to change that. Right. And also for me, like I'm showing up for Instagram for a lit up life too. And so to like double that up is a lot. Like, even if you like Instagram, like I like Instagram, right? Even if you like it, like full-time giving that to 2 accounts is a fucking lot. Right. So that's something worth mentioning too is, it's not always like quite as, simple as it seems. Like it's such a give, right? I know I am a Reels person now. We'll talk about that too. But like, it takes a lot, right? Yeah. Jordan says, I can't imagine having 2 accounts. Totally. It's like, it's full on. So it just didn't make sense for us. So move to 9grid. The other thing that we did that feels important to say is we pick, well, so I guess the way I would say this is we went all in on one funnel. I feel like Jen and I talked about this a little bit the last time she was here. Oh, you had an English and French one. Yeah. Wait, even that, like you can kind of repurpose content. I imagine like you kind of have to remake it, but you could do the same thing. And even that's still a shit ton of work. Yeah. Jess said 2 account overwhelm. Right. Totally. Oh, with the shoulder peep. Yeah. Hello. Very, very like, I kind of got this thinking I would wear it out and then I haven't worn it out. And I was like, well, I'm wearing this fucking thing. So it's coming on a live stream. So I don't know if it's fully live stream appropriate, but I really dig it. So the other thing we did at Datable was we decided to go all in on one funnel. So we had kind of started with that mentality in mind. And then I feel like we kind of forked a little bit. And then we had kind of got to this point where we were like, had quite a few irons in the fire. And I remember just having this like aha moment where I was like, nope, too much, we're done. And I remember sending Megan and Jen this like really long message and being like, someone tell me if I'm crazy or thinking about this wrong, but like, we have to pull back on everything. We have to focus in one place. We have to I was just like, what are we doing? And so that's what we've done like really, really, really significantly is we pulled back on like everything else but one funnel. And it takes a really fucking long time, by the way. Still, all of this takes work and energy. It takes a really fucking long time to get one funnel fully up and running, fully functioning, fully performing. Like all of that is not a small effort. The back and off the shoulder gives me Scorpio season vibes. Maybe that's why. Maybe I'm feeling Scorpio season. But like, okay, here's a serious question. Has anybody created a webinar? If you want to do those puppies right, they are no joke. Like they take a lot of work. By the way, I don't think I've ever even shared Datable webinar here. It's so fucking good. Just saying. Hold on. Let me drop the link. I don't think I've ever shared it. And please God, let that be the link. Jen knows these things. I don't. Webinars are a whole thing. Shantae said so much work. Yes. Like they are a whole fucking thing. I think ours is phenomenal. I think it is so pretty. No, that's the most important part, but our slides are bomb. And it took a lot of effing work. Yeah, Shantae said as a projector, it takes so much effort too, but yeah, objectively they're a challenge. Totally. I mean, listen, I'm a generator and I'm a worker and there's still a challenge. So, it's fair. So yeah, that we just like pulled back and focused everything on that. And again, like we're not moving as fast as we could because this is both Jen and I's second business, but I'm so proud that we did that. And I'm so proud of what we produced because of it. And there's still so much we have to like look at, tweak, work on there, all of that. But I say that because it was just getting too easy to like make all the things, especially because Jen is actually like fucking so phenomenal at this stuff. If you're in Measure and Maximize and you've like been on a call with her, you know that if somebody like asks for something, she like has created like most of a resource guide before we even get off the call. Like she's so incredible. So like we, in some ways are such a great match because all of a great idea. She's so good at creation and like, it's just easy to get off down the wrong road sometimes. And so we've just both had to be really disciplined. Like we have this running document of like 500 other ideas and we're saying no to all of them because one funnel is the thing. And we're going to like work it, you know? Yeah, Shantae said, especially to do them with the intention for them to convert to like effort. Yes. Oh, I was just wondering what funnel you decide on. Yeah. Check it out. At least it's a good webinar. Speaking of data, unless you're using data, webinars are so much harder and more challenging than they need to be. Oh my gosh, Adrienne, you are speaking my language. It is so true. And I think that's so important to say too, like Jen and I know our data inside and out. We probably track it better than I would say 99.9% of online businesses. It's still a bitch to do the webinar thing. And it also works really well. You know, like we've seen really good performance from our webinar. We're super proud of it. And it was not a small undertaking. We've also done quite a bit of like guest experting stuff within Datable that we're like really proud of, but we put a lot into it. So it's really been a refocusing. And so we've basically pared everything else down and gone all in. And what I really know for sure is that with the amount of time and energy Jen and I have to give with like our skill sets and with our ability to like look at data, whatever, like this is the path for us. Like I just know that. And I think it's important to know that in your own business too. Like, do you know, like based on everything, what is our path? What makes the most sense for us? What are we willing to go all in on? Like, what are we doubling down on? And can we be brave enough to say no to everything else? Because it does feel brave in many ways. Like, even though with like shutting down Instagram, it kind of didn't feel brave because like the data was just obvious. It's still a whole thing, right? It's still also a thing of like, what's the word? Archiving, like all of that work that you've done. Like it's like all of this takes a lot. It's still a thing to have to like say no to all of the other good ideas. There's like a Steve Jobs quote that I always love and think about so often, and where he talks about how like focus isn't saying yes to one thing. Like that's the easy part. Focus is saying no to the 100 other good ideas that come up. And I have found that to be so accurate for me. Like I don't have trouble focusing on one thing. I have trouble saying no to all of these other things that are a good idea. And so just really working that has been the thing. So we've made all of those changes in Datable because we were doing so much too. Like I wasn't the only one focused on like emails and content and things like that. So that's another thing I put attention to is like recently I started writing the Datable newsletter every week. So like that's me writing that every week. Because I want to do that well. Like I think Shantae, you said like taking that time and energy and putting it into email. So for me, I'm like, I want to put it into one funnel and I want to put it into like cultivating, speaking to the leads we already have in it. And so taking that back has been really, really nice. And made me feel just like more connected to the process instead of more like spread everywhere. It's like, okay, let's approve this content and get this going and get this thing going. And now it's like, write one newsletter, pour your heart into it. Great, done, And I've only been doing it for like, I don't know, since the beginning of October, and it's just felt so good. Yeah, such a good point. Jordan said, great. That is so true. I was just talking about that to a client, supporting her to focus on her main effort, not trying to yes and please everyone else for what they want her to make. Oh my God, always. Yep. Especially after the conversation last week on simplifying your one funnel, it feels like a deepening, right? Like the very deep in intention, 100%. It's like, oh, I can like give here. It's almost like if you're like dating 12 people, there's like things that are fun about that. But when you like really settle down with one person and can like fully give, it's like such a different feeling, right? Elisa said, you would be so proud. I listed out all of my past one-on-one clients from the past couple of years and was looking at where each person actually came from. Yes. Oh my God, I'm so proud. Oh, that makes me so happy. That is so good, Elisa. I'm sure that was like very enlightening too. Okay, so I think that's it for Datable. 9 grid, one funnel, taking back newsletter, watch our webinar. It's really good. Okay, so let's talk about a lit up life. So one of the biggest changes we've made at a lit up life, which is interesting because I used to always preach the opposite so hard, but like shit changes in our space, right? So let's talk about that. Is basically I've taken back almost all of our content. And what I used to preach is like, don't ever create content for one place, which I still agree with that fully. Will explain or can explain, and repurpose everything. And like, in many ways, I still do repurpose the idea behind everything. But instead of like having a team member watch this live stream and write a post from it, now that would be me. By and large, I wouldn't say like every single thing, but most things for this at this moment. Like I'm trying to think of what I'm not doing right now. And two things are true here. One is it is objectively more work, but I think we're seeing more bang for that buck, so to speak. And I think also it's less work in many other ways. So let me think of how I can say this. Like, instead of like I'm so fast at writing. And so technically it is much faster when team creates something and I can go review it and it takes, but like in some ways it is a different brain element. And I feel a little bit in more flow when I can just write it. Yeah, the content thing is a big shift. Yeah, I can share so many reasons behind that, but it is a really big shift because I used to do and preach the exact opposite. And it's actually pretty evident, by the way, like your content has felt very different in the past few months, like a bit more of a different touch, not making the other way wrong, but witnessing the shift. Does that make sense? Totally, Shantae. I actually really, really appreciate that. That feels really validating. So thank you. Elisa said, yes, I just saw your reel today and was like, okay, a first reel again. And second, something personal. Who are you and what have you done with Lacey? Yeah, I think like obviously some of it, okay, so let's talk about reasons behind it. Obviously some of it is just strategic. Like it just performs better. Right? Like when I have done it in a reel versus when I don't, it performs way better. However, that doesn't mean that's like all I want to do. Like I don't want my whole business to be based around that. But a lot of it isn't just strategic. It's feeling like I want to stay really connected to the business. Like I think that you guys remember that live stream I did about what to do if you've lost the spark in your business. And I was like, get in it, get in it, get in it. And that's just always been my magic. It's like, I've always been really in it with clients and in the business. And then obviously last year I had to be more out of it than I've probably ever been. Because, you know, my dad was really, really ill. I was on maternity leave. I had a new baby, like so much in my life was going on. And so I do feel like I disconnected from content quite a bit. And I'm so fucking grateful that I had a business where I could do that. Like, that I will preach forever. You don't have to do all your content, but you better have a content bake and you better have a team that can repurpose it if and when you need them to. Like that, I will preach all day, every day, and I will die on that hill. But now that I have a little more spaciousness, creativity back, you know, like all the things postpartum kind of sucks out of you. I am like, I want to be more connected to the content. I want to be more connected in this way. I want to play more. I also feel, what's the word? I feel like I want to share my heart even more. So like that, I did like a reel on motherhood today. And like, yes, again, of course, a reel with Ben, it's going to perform better, but it like, I just want to share that part of my life a little bit more than I've ever wanted to. Like, I love that I haven't had to build my business by sharing it, but it doesn't mean that I never want to share it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's such a tension or a fine line there of like, the idea of having a business that's based on me showing up and sharing my life every day is like a very hard no for me. I don't think it's wrong or bad, just for like my personality. Don't think that serves me. But like, it doesn't mean I never want to, you know? And so I think like last year I didn't want to at all because everything I was in was so difficult. And then, you know, the year before that was COVID. So who had fucking anything to share anyway? Like I didn't leave my house. And so I feel like this is like my first time of being like, ooh, like I want to share that. Like, look at how cute Bennett is with this cow. Like it lights me up so much. So it's just different, right? Yeah, such an interesting way of thinking about it. Thank you, Jordan. Shantae said it speaks to honoring the seasons you're in too. Yes, permission giving. Like we can shift based on the overarching season we're in and let that be okay. Totally. Yes, yes, yes. Share our copies for the 100th time. Yeah, totally. But yeah, like I think it really is just about honoring where you're at. And so there was a time where I was like, I could not possibly hold this. And I also feel like that was a time where that didn't impact my results or social performance as much, but I feel like the algorithm has gotten so much more sensitive or whatever, you know, like precise, sensitive, specific. I don't know how else you want to say that, where when it's always someone else writing it, it does, even if it came from something I said, which all of my content always has. I've never had someone write something that didn't come directly from like a live stream or a podcast or something like that. But like, it just does make a difference. Or even like, you know, the reels. It's so funny, guys. So that was my other change. So maybe we'll just move into that because they're kind of intertwined, but I've been making reels. And there's so many things that are funny about this. One is that I was so against it for so long. So that's funny. And two is I think the more I've gotten into data, the more I actually really, really enjoy reels, which is funny, but I fucking love looking at the numbers now. I find it so interesting. It just does it for me. I don't know why. And I know for most people, it's like actually super triggering to be like that in the numbers. So I'm not suggesting that for everybody, but for me, it has been so fun. And I just think about it like, ooh, what will I try next? And how will that perform? And what will people think of this one? And will it, like, and I just find it really fucking fascinating. And it just feels like a thing that I'm having a ton of fun exploring right now. And I think reels is like a really easy way to do that and to see almost like immediate data and feedback, which I love. Same. No problem, Melanie. Thank you for being here. Excuse me. Thank you for being here. Okay. Elisa said, I love this conversation because I think it's really a balance between sticking to what you do and seeing where the industry is going and adapting. Totally. And I think that's part of it too, right? Like because I look at the data, I could just see that like a lot of that other stuff wasn't performing in the way that I ultimately wanted it to. And something I'm really good at, like one of my strengths on Strengths Finders is futuristic. So I'm like a very good futuristic thinker, like where are things going? And I was like, I have, like the last time we opened waitlist applications, we had like 90 applications or something like that. We have a huge waitlist still. I probably wouldn't experience the effects, so to speak, of not shifting my content for maybe years, even. Like maybe I could ride that for even a couple years. But at some point, if you do not shift, if you do not see the writing on the wall, if you are not willing to go, this is trending in a direction I probably ultimately don't want it to go, you will experience the knockoff effects of that, right? Knock on, knock off, whatever. You'll experience that. And so I'm really good at seeing that. Like, yeah, I could ride this and it doesn't matter right now, but I would rather do it now when it's fucking fun and it's not intense and pressured, right? Like I can have all the fun with reels right now because it doesn't matter. I'm not like using the reels like get me a client tomorrow, right? So I would much rather do that than like, whatever, a year or two from now when I'm like, oh yeah, shit has tanked because I didn't bother to pay attention to what was changing. And now everyone I do is so important and it means so much and it has so much pressure behind it because I waited. And so that's something I've really been thinking about a lot too, is like, I don't want to wait. Like if the writing's on the wall that what we're doing is not translating in the way that it used to, then I want to be willing to make a change and kind of like eat it. And what I mean by eat it is like, so what if I've always talked about having your team repurpose? Like that was what I was doing at the time. And it was what I really believed in. And I think it was what was still working with the algorithm until it wasn't. And then I'm like willing to make a change. I think some people hold on to stuff for so long instead of being like, the industry has just changed. So my mind changed about it. They're like, no, this is still right. This is still crap. This is still a thing. Right. And like, I just always see those things go badly. If you guys paid attention when I was doing that, doing the NFT, the golden ticket, I wrote quite a few posts on this article that this guy had written about the internet when the internet was like, coming alive. And everything about it was like about how it's never going to take off, how it's bullshit, how people are always going to prefer like a printed newspaper over reading something on the computer, et cetera, et cetera. He went deep, like it was very funny. And reading that now, it's like, oh my gosh, if he would have pivoted right then, his whole career trajectory would have changed. But instead, he doubled down and he wrote this whole book on how the internet was going nowhere. And now, I'm sure he spends most of his time being like, yeah, I was wrong. You know what I mean? So I just think like being willing to go, yeah, I see this and I'm willing to change with it is so, so important. Yeah. Right. And also something about me I'm sure this is something about my human design or something. I don't know the specifics, but I'm like a very hard yes or a very hard no until I'm a yes, or a very like, I don't know how to put it. What am I trying to say? Like, like I can be like, no, no, no. And then all of a sudden one day I can wake up and be like, oh yeah, probably that's fine. And that's kind of my experience with reels. Like, I'm like, nope, 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 not for me, not my thing, not my thing. And then one day I just woke up and was like, oh, how to make a reel? Like, it was just like, I don't know. I'm sure some of it was like, because I saw things changing, but it was like something just like shifted. I don't know. And now it just doesn't feel like a no. Yeah, Michelle said sacral. That makes sense. Yeah, totally. Oh, let me see what Elisa said. So I'm wondering what things you feel are shifting right now. Personally, I've felt lately that free calls are not performing as well as even a couple of years ago, for example. Okay, yeah, I can share on that. Yeah, stubborn until another feeling comes along. Shantae, I think you nailed it. That's so true. I've had that before, like it switched off, turned on in my brain. Yeah, it's so funny. It was just like, I was like, no, not my thing, not my thing. I'll even like, you guys probably saw it was like, I'll double down on carousels, but like, that's it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is great. And now nobody would even believe me if I told you this. I have, you guys, I kid you not, I have 11, somebody note that, 11 Reels drafts sitting on my phone right now. 11. That's how into it I've been lately. It's so funny. Oh, splenic. It's a yes until no, which is me. Yeah. Totally. 11, Shantae. 11. Also, I don't even know if my phone can like hold all of these. I should probably check on that. I just thought of that as I said that out loud. I'm like, oh God, I hope they don't like auto delete or something. These are things I don't know because I haven't done Reel. Okay, so with Elisa's question, what things are changing? I think those Reels drafts mess with me because I make them when I'm excited and then I go back and the excitement energy is gone later. That's funny, Michelle. Don't erase your IG account or log out. You'll lose them. Okay, that's good to know. Don't log out. Okay. I need to remember that. Okay. Don't log out. Okay. So, okay. Things that I should be changing. I definitely think like content that is less like, here are 3 tips and more like, here is my experience. Obviously, again, I'm not saying this happened yesterday, but I think just in general, right? That is, like, I think that we don't want experts in the way that we used to want experts. Yes, emotional authority. Yeah, definitely. Before posting a reel, save the video without audio because you will be mad when IG screws you over. Oh, I did not know that. Okay, save the video without audio. Okay. That's super helpful, Michelle. Okay. Stop. Meant to say, wait, okay, save video, no audio. So I think, okay, to go big picture for a second, I feel like with COVID, that obviously blew up our online space. Did I already share this here? If I did, someone tell me to shut the fuck up if I just shared this on a live stream recently. But I feel like COVID really blew up our space. And I feel like we were so much more engaged with social media in a way that we weren't because we weren't engaging with life in the same way, right? And so we were like, teach me something, tell me something, like I want to use this time, I want it to feel meaningful, I want to learn something. And so I feel like there was this massive blow up of like expert teachy content, and performed really, really well because I think we wanted that. Like we wanted to be engaged and like, excited in that way. Okay. This is helpful, Michelle. Thank you. Sorry. I'm like trying to be in both headspaces. That's really helpful though. Okay. So we were like, really like, engage me, teach me something, like, you know what I mean? Like we were in. And so I feel like that worked so well for a while. And then, you know, as things have shifted and I think everyone's just like out in the world more and engaged with life more, I think we don't want to be as stimulated by social media. I think in many ways, escapist content is what is doing by far the best. escapist meaning less like kind of like the Datable thing, right? Like I think in 2020, Datable content might have really soared. And I think now when like more escapist content is performing better, I don't want to like be scrolling and like learning about data on Instagram. Does that make sense? Like, so it's like now we're overstimulated by life. So we don't want to be as stimulated by social. And so I think that like, yeah, it's like why we'd rather hear someone's story than hear them tell us 3 tips, or why we'd really rather hear, see like a funnier reel than, you know, have someone like be the expert. Now, I'm still an expert in the things I'm an expert in. I'm going to share like that. I'm going to show up like that, but I can find different ways to package that and frame that and present that I think fits a little bit more with how people are consuming. And honestly, I've seen that shift in myself too. So, you know, I'm like happy to pivot to that. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's what I've seen change a lot with social is like how we want it to be stimulating versus not stimulating, escapist, how we like to engage with it. I think the way we engage with social has also changed quite a lot. Michelle said I need a whole live stream on what to do when your content isn't escapist content. I think my comment didn't go through. No, I don't think so. But does sensationalized content make sense here? Like a bit more aspirational, less teachy? Yeah, I think so for sure. More aspirational, I think is working a lot better right now. And I think again, just more like really sharing you and sharing like your real point of view and like making it a little bit more like, here's my full on opinion versus like, here's like the 3 things I want to teach you. I don't know if that makes sense, right? What else was I going to say about that? Oh, and I think we engage with it so differently than we used to too. Like, I think it's harder to get comments and likes and things like that. Like I even noticed myself, I like love a TikTok scroll and like, I just forget to like things. It's not because I don't like things. It's just like less of the way I engage with social right now. And so I think that's a whole other thing too. Like we need to be looking at other things to a certain extent. Like saves are a great example. Like I'll save a bunch of shit. If I'm like, oh yeah, I need to remember that for Bennett, or like, oh, we should go to that restaurant or whatever. Like I'll hit save before I'll hit like. And again, it's not because I'm like stingy with my likes. I just don't think about it in the same way. Or it's like, I'm more thinking like, oh yeah, I want to remember that, or I want to, you know, do that or grab that or whatever, versus like, oh, I want this creator to know I like it. And so obviously I can work harder at that, but I think a lot of people do that, right? I gave a bullet point structure the other day and the crowd went wild. I love that, Jess. You're a saving fiend, right? Like, and so I try to look at that a lot with my content. Like I want to see saves and stuff too, because I feel like that's almost what I make my content trying to think about a little bit more, because I think that, yeah, we're just getting engagement in less of a way. And I think people are more scared to engage in some ways, because it's like, oh my God, what does that mean? Is someone going to reach out and pitch me, blah, blah, blah. Michelle said my escapist rabbit hole is style, content, and astrology shit. I love that. So anyway, I think again, it's sort of like, I still want to teach about the same things, but I'm also happy to like shift a little bit about how I'm teaching and talking about that. And I think that's just changed quite a bit. In terms of free calls, I think it really depends a lot on your audience and positioning. I think people are a lot more, your fave, yes, same. That's so funny. I think people are a lot more lacking in the trust department. I know we've been talking about that in our industry a lot. And so I think they don't trust the space of a free call in the way that they used to, Elisa. So I think you're right about that. I think it feels, yeah, just like a little bit more unsafe than it maybe used to. Like, I think it used to feel like, oh, more than likely I will have a good experience with this. And I think now it feels a little bit like more than likely I won't, or more than likely I'm just going to get a hard pitch or whatever. And so I do think like the frame around a lot of that trust has changed things for sure. Nova said, I've never looked at my saved ADHD much. Oh my gosh, that made me laugh. Yes. It's, astrology combo. Okay. Love it. Elisa said, like, what have I seen change? And she said, like, she notices free calls I can't remember exactly how she said it. Maybe she could say it again. Like free calls are like being taken up less or like converting less. I imagine being taken up less because that's what I see. I think if you can get people on the call, they actually convert better than they ever have, because you build that trust through them. But I agree with you that getting people on them is definitely harder because of that trust issue. And because I think like we're just so skeptical of stuff like that now, because it's gotten so kind of bastardized in our space in so many ways. And so, yeah, I agree with you there for sure. And yeah, I think it's just like, it's okay to change that. Like I have always preached free calls. I still will. And there's context there. Like, I think we have to go about them differently, all of that kind of stuff. Right. Yes, I feel like it needs an extra step for that trust piece before the call. Agree with you very much. Totally. Due for another TikTok. Damn. Oh, I don't think you mean me, Michelle. It doesn't show me when you're on a thread. Sorry. Okay. That makes sense. I'll run a test this week and see, but in the past 6 months, they weren't being taken up on. Yeah. I think that's, again, not that they don't trust you, but I think like by and large, that's probably why $50 sessions go quicker. Yeah. I think people just feel like they can trust that a little bit more. It's so interesting, but I think that's true. And I think it's a bummer, to be honest. Like it sucks that like people don't just trust like I want to serve you kind of thing anymore, but it makes sense. It really does. But yeah, I do think they still convert. I just think they're definitely harder to get takers on. I like this as evidence. I was just thinking of changing to that. Yeah, totally makes sense for sure. And I think like, this is just a good example of like, we get to change and evolve. And like, as the space changes, we have to change our mind. Like, I think one of the things I am often a bit disappointed about with people that I see as like leaders in our industry is I don't think they pay attention to that. And so they keep preaching something that needs more context or has changed or evolved and aren't willing to say that. And so people get really confused and they're like, well, so-and-so said that all I need to do is this and it should work. Why is that not working for me? And it's like, well, so-and-so probably hasn't even like updated her thought process on that in 4 years, And so I feel like there's really a thing there where we do need to be willing to do that. Again, like I can say I've always preached free calls and support in your content creation. And I still believe in both of those things with additional context based on where industry is at now, Yeah, Shantae, exactly. It's like, I just want to serve you. Jess said, I wonder if it's also people understanding reciprocity more. Like they know a free call isn't really free versus $50 feels like you have permission to take it and not go into the next thing if it doesn't feel right. I think that's true too, Jess, for sure. That's very good insight. Yeah. Okay. So last thing though, that has changed with the Lit Up Life that I think is really important to say, because what I said is like, objectively, I've taken on more work, but I've also done a lot less this year in many ways. And that's how this is working. And I feel like that's important to say. So we've really taken on the philosophy of less better this year. And so on the better front, it's why I've taken so much of it back. Right. But on the less front, we're posting less than we ever used to and putting out less than we used to. So when I had all that extra support for it, we could easily post, 7 days a week. And I was like, no thing. Now we probably post 3 or 4, maybe a little more since I have fucking 11 drafts sitting there, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like we've had to pull back. So it's like, okay, if we want to do it better and I want to take more of it on, I have to do less. And so I just wanted to say that because I think that permission is important there too. I don't want to be saying this and going, oh yeah, and I'm just like superhuman and do it all. Like I'm super not. It's just about reworking priorities. It's like, okay, so our priority used to be get a lot of content out because that used to be kind of what served the algorithm and what worked. And now I think it's get better content out. I think that's what's serving more. I don't seem to see a big difference in how much I post, right? Jess, I'm going to talk about these 11 drafts all day. If you're a client and you have a call with me today, expect to hear about my 11 drafts. I've already texted Kenny about it. I told Megan about it. Like, this is a big deal. Okay. I need someone to send me a gold star or statue or something. It's a thing. Okay. So what was I saying? I got so excited again because we talked better. Yes. So, but that means you have to do less. Like, and I think you just have to remember the balance of that. Like, it's not just like do the exact same amount and do more. Like that does not work the same way, unless you want to burn out. And so I think like, as you see social change, as you see these things change, you also have to think about like, how can I change with it without expecting myself to do all the things I've always done? It's like, how can I reimagine it all? Which I think can feel overwhelming. Sometimes it is an important question and thought to not get so rigid and like, well, I have to post 5 to 7 times a week. It's like, I don't have to do shit, but if I want to do less better, what I probably need to do is, whatever, like post 3 times a week. Take yourself a midday bath to celebrate Jess. That actually sounds like a fucking great idea. Michelle, thank you for your affirmation. A reel from me on IG. I know. So yeah, permission to do less if that is what is required of you in the season you're in and whatever you need. So it's like, if you're like, I'm with you, I want to be playing with reels so much more too. Okay, you might have to give something else up. I don't know what that might be for you. Like, do you email your list less? Do you make other content less? Do you take on less clients? Do you take something else off your plate? Like whatever, but like obviously make changes when it feels relevant, shift with the industry, but do not put yourself in a position to feel like you always have to maintain every single other thing. Something I always talk about is stacking, not shifting. And to me, this is still stacking, right? Like I'm stacking better content. I'm not like shifting away and doing, TikTok now or anything. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do content better, but I also need to pull back. That's still a stack to me. So just for clarity there. But yeah, you're probably going to have to do less. I know the cow. It was so cute, Michelle, like so cute. It's at like this little market right by our house, and you can go like anytime, and they just have cows, and you can buy feed buckets and feed them. And it is like, I'm like, can we just do like, I take him sometimes like once a week because it's so cute. Jess said, are you sure you don't mean do more? Jess, yes, that was for you. Michelle said, need an emergency session to discuss reels and cows. I love it. So good. Well, I'll happily discuss my reel straps. So sign me up. Okay, so that's what I got. I hope that was helpful. So we made some big changes at Datable. We made some big changes at A Lit Up Life. Also, like you probably see some of them, like we're talking about, you see the reels, you see the content shifting, and also like you probably don't always realize how much of a shift it is internally. And so remember, your audience is the same too. Like sometimes it can feel like, oh my God, I'm making such big shifts. And for your audience, it feels like a pretty seamless transition. So just wanted to share that and remind you of that too, because sometimes I think it can feel like, oh my gosh, they know how much this has changed, or like it's going to feel so big for them. But it's like, I don't think anybody fucking noticed when I went from posting 5 to 7 days a week to 3. Like, I literally don't think anyone noticed. So permission for that too. Like, you don't have anyone to apologize to. They're probably not even going to notice. Like, do what's best for you. That will always go well. So I love you guys. I have 11 reels drafts. Okay. I just wanted to say that one more time. And then also, while I'm thinking about it, if you haven't grabbed that, I just put in the Datable webinar. Highly recommend. So good. Go watch it just to tell me how pretty you think the slides are, please. And thank you. All right, guys. I love you. I had so much fun with you today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for cheering me on with my drafts. Thank you for listening. If y'all have any questions, let me know. All right. Bye, guys.